$1,800 a month. That's what it cost to save my dad's life from cancer. It's also what it cost to learn who my girlfriend really was. Hey, I'm Liam. I was chopping onions for dinner when my phone rang. Dad's name on the screen, which was weird because he never calls during the week. I wiped my hands and picked up, expecting him to ask about some computer problem or complain about mom's cooking. Stage 3 colon cancer. Just like that, boom. The words hit me like a truck, you know? Dad's voice was steady, but I could hear the fear underneath. He'd been having stomach issues for months, kept brushing it off as getting older. Mom finally dragged him to the doctor last week. Now, they're talking about 8 to 10 months of immunotherapy, $1,800 a month that insurance won't cover because it's considered experimental. I'm standing there holding this knife, onion juice burning my eyes, and my dad's telling me they can't afford it. Not long term. They've got maybe 3 months in savings before they're tapped out. I make $75,000 as an IT dev, not exactly swimming in cash, but I'm 28 with no kids, and my biggest expense is Ava's obsession with that overpriced sushi place downtown. Told him I'd cover it without even thinking. What else was I going to do? Let my dad die because insurance companies are greedy bastards? The math hit me later that night while I was staring at my laptop screen, pulling up budgets and bank statements. $1,800 a month meant cutting everything that wasn't rent, utilities, groceries, and gas. No more restaurants, no vacation to Mexico we'd been planning, no random Amazon purchases, no craft beer, nothing. I waited until Sunday evening to tell Ava. We were on the couch. She was scrolling Instagram while some reality show played in the background. I turned the volume down and just laid it out straight. Dad has cancer, needs expensive treatment. I'm paying for it. We need to tighten our budget hardcore for the next year. She looked up from her phone, and for a second I saw a real sympathy in her eyes. She asked how bad it was, said she was sorry, all the right things. But then her brain started working, calculating what this meant for her life. I watched it happen in real time, man. Her expression shifted from concern to this kind of cold assessment. So no restaurants at all? She asked. What about our Mexico trip? I explained we'd have to cancel, that we'd be eating at home for the foreseeable future, that discretionary spending was dead until Dad was better. She nodded, but I could see her jaw tightening, that look she gets when she's pissed but try not to show it. The kicker was what happened next. Madison texted about going out that night, some new cocktail bar that just opened. I figure Ava would decline, given that we just talked about my dad having cancer and needing to save money. Instead, she grabbed her purse and started putting on lipstick. Like nothing had happened. Like we hadn't just discussed my father possibly dying and me committing every spare dollar to keeping him alive. She kissed my forehead and walked out the door, leaving me sitting there wondering what the hell I just witnessed. That was the first crack, the first time I really looked at who I was with and felt this cold knot in my stomach. I just told my girlfriend of 2 years that my dad had cancer, that I was sacrificing everything to save his life, and her immediate response was to go blow $50 on Cosmos at some trendy bar. I spent that night researching treatment options, calling my parents, figuring out logistics. She came home at midnight smelling like expensive perfume and whiskey, complaining about how Madison's date was a loser and how the bar was too crowded. Never asked how I was doing. Never mentioned my dad. Just fell into bed and passed out while I lay there staring at the ceiling, doing math in my head and wondering if the person next to me gave a shit about anything that mattered to me. Should have known right then what I was dealing with. Should have seen that when push came to shove, when life got real and required actual sacrifice, she'd check out. But I made excuses, told myself she was just processing, that she'd step up once the shock wore off. Yeah, she stepped up all right. Just not the way I expected.
Hey there, this is Ava. I hate thinking about this period of my life, but here we are. Those first few weeks after Liam dropped the cancer bomb, I really did try to be supportive. I mean, come on, his dad was sick. Of course I wanted to help. But $1,800 a month? For almost a year? I kept doing the math in my head, adding up all the things we'd have to give up, all the experiences we'd miss out on. I was 26, for crying out loud. This was supposed to be my fun time, my figuring it out time, my living in the city and having adventures time. Instead, I was meal prepping on Sundays like some suburban mom and eating the same turkey and rice bowl 5 days in a row. Do you know how depressing it is to watch everyone else on Instagram at rooftop bars and new restaurants while you're sitting at home with Tupperware containers? The worst part was how cooperative I was being on the surface. I'd smile when Liam got excited about finding chicken thighs on sale. I'd nod enthusiastically when he suggested we try that new hiking trail instead of going to brunch. But inside I was screaming. Every time Madison texted about girls' night or happy hour specials, I felt this tightness in my chest like I was suffocating. The complaints started small, just venting to Madison and a few other friends. I'm 26. I should be living my life, not eating meal prep like I'm training for a bodybuilding competition. They should have saved better for retirement, planned ahead something. It's not fair that I have to sacrifice my prime years because they didn't think about what would happen if they got sick. I know how that sounds now, but at the time it felt completely justified. Everyone else my age was going to concerts, taking weekend trips, dating people who could afford decent restaurants. I was stuck in this weird domestic bubble with someone who got genuinely excited about finding generic brand cereal on sale. Then Derek started showing up more at work events. He was everything Liam wasn't in that moment. Successful, spontaneous, the kind of guy who'd suggest drinks at that new place everyone was talking about without checking his banking app first. When he offered to grab coffee after a late meeting, I said yes without thinking. When coffee turned into wine, I didn't stop it. Nothing happened. Not really, but something shifted in my head. Being around Derek reminded me what it felt like to feel desired by someone who wasn't worried about grocery budgets and medical bills. He made me remember who I was before I became this martyred girlfriend eating sad desk salads and pretending to be grateful for it. I started pulling away from Liam without even realizing it. Sex became this chore because I'd associate it with our cramped little life, our stupid limitations. I'd make excuses not to visit his dad at the hospital because it felt too real, too much like accepting that this was actually my problem to deal with. I was 26, not 66. This wasn't the life I'd signed up for when we started dating. The breaking point came about 6 weeks into our new budget lifestyle. Liam was in the kitchen making pasta for the millionth time, humming like this was all totally normal, and something just snapped. I couldn't live like this anymore. His parents should have planned better, should have had better insurance, should have done something other than expecting their son to sacrifice his entire future for their mistakes. I told him he needed to choose, find loans, set up payment plans, figure something else out, or I was done. I couldn't watch my 20s disappear because his family didn't prepare for adult responsibilities. The look on his face when I said it, like I'd slapped him, almost made me take it back. Almost. He didn't call. For a week, nothing. I told myself he'd come to his senses eventually. Realize that sacrificing our relationship for a medical situation that might not even have a happy ending was stupid and short-sighted. I was doing him a favor, really, forcing him to see that there had to be other solutions.
1 week of living alone, and I was already starting to feel human again. No more walking on eggshells. No more pretending everything was fine while my girlfriend treated my dad's cancer like a personal inconvenience. The apartment was quiet but peaceful, you know? I could call my parents without worrying about Ava rolling her eyes in the background. Dad's treatment was going better than expected. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, talking about shrinking tumors and improved markers. Mom sounded lighter on the phone, less scared. For the first time since this whole nightmare started, I felt like we might actually beat this thing. Friday afternoon, I'm debugging some client code when my phone rings. Unknown number, probably spam, but something made me pick up. Axiom Tech, the company I'd interviewed with 6 months ago and completely forgotten about. The position had been filled, they said, but now it was open again and they wanted me. Senior developer role, 115,000 base salary, stock options, better health insurance, the whole package. I'm sitting there staring at my monitor, doing math in my head. $40,000 raise. $1,800 a month for Dad's treatment suddenly becomes pocket change. The cruel irony hit me like a punch to the gut. Ava bailed right before everything got easier. 6 weeks of budget meals and canceled plans broke her, and now none of it even mattered. Drove to the hospital that evening to tell Dad the news. Found him in his usual spot by the window, looking better than he had in months. The treatment was working, his color was back. He was joking with the nurses. I told him about the job offer and watched his face light up. Then texted Ava that evening, kept it vague. Can we talk? Something happened. Left it at that and waited. Hours of silence. Then finally a response, cold as ice. If this is about your dad, I already told you where I stand. Like his possible death was just some annoying topic she didn't want to rehash. I typed back, it's about a job offer. My phone rang in 90 seconds. 90 fucking seconds, man. Her voice was completely different, warm, excited, breathless like she'd been running. Could she come over? Could she be there in 20 minutes? The transformation was so instant, so complete, it actually made my skin crawl. She showed up 19 minutes later in a dress she hadn't worn in months, makeup done, smelling like that expensive perfume she saves for special occasions. I opened the door, and there she was, practically vibrating with excitement, eyes bright like she was expecting a marriage proposal. The performance was Oscar-worthy. She'd overreacted. She said, family was important. That's what she loved about me, my loyalty. We could get that downtown apartment now. Maybe start talking about a wedding timeline. She was touching my arm, pressing close, giving me that smile that used to make my knees weak. What struck me was how she never once asked about my dad. Not how he was doing, not if the treatment was working, nothing. Just straight into planning our upgraded lifestyle. New restaurants we could try, vacation destinations we could afford now, furniture upgrade for the bigger place we could rent. I let her talk for maybe 10 minutes, watching this person I'd lived with for 2 years reveal exactly who she was underneath all the masks she wore. When she finally paused for breath, I laid it out plain. You gave me an ultimatum 6 weeks into this budget, I said. 6 weeks of eating at home and skipping bars, and you told me to choose between my dying father and you. You ignored me for a week until I mentioned a job offer. You only called when I said money was involved. Only thing that changed between yesterday and today is my salary. Her face went through this whole cycle, confusion, defensiveness, anger, then this calculating look like she was trying to figure out how to spin this back in her favor. I kept going. You couldn't support me through a minor adjustment to our lifestyle. You told me to choose between you and my father. You show me exactly who you are when things get difficult. You don't love me. You love what I can provide. The mask finally fell completely off. She tried to argue that she was young, that she had needs, that I couldn't expect her to sacrifice her prime years for my family's problems, that his parents should have planned better, that I was being manipulative by making her feel guilty. I told her to get her stuff next week while I was at work, that we were done, that I'd seen enough. She completely lost it then, screaming about how I was nothing before this job offer, how I'd regret throwing away someone who actually loved me, how I'd never find anyone better. I recorded the whole meltdown on my phone. Wanted proof for myself later, in case I started second-guessing what kind of person she really was. The things she said, the venom in her voice, the way she tried to make my dad's cancer about her suffering. I got it all. After she left, I felt lighter than I had in months. Like I'd been carrying around this weight I didn't even know was there. The apartment was mine again, quiet and peaceful. I made dinner without calculating the cost per serving. I started the new job 3 weeks later. Better pay, better benefits, better everything. And no one to share it with who'd only love me for what I could buy them.
God, the immediate aftermath was brutal. I spent that first month telling everyone who'd listened that Liam got money and dumped me, like I was the victim in all this. Most of our mutual friends didn't buy it, which stung more than I expected. Sarah from our college group actually said she'd heard about the cancer situation and asked why I'd given him an ultimatum during such a difficult time. The shame that washed over me in that moment, I wanted to disappear. Madison stayed loyal at first, let me crash at her place, and vent about what an asshole Liam was, but even she started questioning my version of events. His dad had cancer. Ava, she said one night after I'd spent 2 hours analyzing every detail of our last fight. You gave him an ultimatum. Maybe you should think about that. I threw myself into proving I was fine, better off, living my best life. Went out with Derek that first week, slept with him thinking it would feel like victory, like I'd moved on to someone better. He ghosted me completely afterward. Wouldn't even make eye contact at work events. The humiliation was crushing. I'd blown up my relationship for someone who saw me as a convenient hookup. The dating that followed was a nightmare parade of disappointment. Tyler, the investment banker, seemed perfect until I found out he was cheating with 3 other women he'd met on apps. James had the startup that was supposedly about to explode, but turned out to be all debt and delusion. He couldn't even afford coffee without checking his account balance. Chris was actually decent. Stable job, kind personality, but then he got laid off and suggested we start cooking at home more to save money. That's when I started stalking Liam's social media, which was pathetic, but I couldn't stop myself. Saw him at some tech conference looking genuinely happy, posting about hiking trips and dinner parties with friends. Then came the photos with Janet, this nurse he'd apparently met through his dad's treatment. She looked wholesome and kind, the type who probably volunteered at animal shelters and baked cookies for coworkers' birthdays. I found myself analyzing their photos obsessively. The way she looked at him, how relaxed and confident he seemed, how his dad appeared in several pictures looking healthy and cancer-free. They did some charity 5K together, all 3 of them wearing matching t-shirts, huge smiles, like they were this perfect little family unit. My friends started getting tired of hearing about Liam after about 6 months. Madison finally told me I needed to stop bringing him up at every gathering, that it was getting weird and uncomfortable. But I couldn't help it. Seeing him thrive while I stumbled through a series of dating disasters felt like proof the universe was fundamentally unfair. I kept telling the same story to anyone who'd listen, that he'd changed when he got money, that success had gone to his head, that he'd thrown away someone who really loved him for someone newer and shinier. But late at night, when I was alone in my overpriced studio apartment, I'd remember that week at Madison's when I was scrolling dating apps and feeling relieved to be free of his family drama. I learned through Sarah from college that Liam's dad was in full remission, completely cancer-free. They'd beaten it. All that sacrifice and worry and budget meals had actually worked, had actually saved his father's life. The part of me that was still human felt genuine relief about that, but it was mixed with this bitter knowledge that I could have been part of that victory story instead of just a footnote about the girlfriend who bailed. 2 years later, I'm sitting in this coffee shop waiting for Marcus, my latest Hinge match who works in finance and has good photos from expensive restaurants. I got a small promotion at work, have my own place. Technically, my life looks fine from the outside. But I'm still the same person who runs when things get hard, who measures love by restaurant bills and vacation destinations. Then my phone buzzes with a notification that makes my stomach drop. Liam's engagement announcement. The photo is beautiful. Him and Janet on some hiking trail, mountains in the background, both of them glowing with that kind of happiness that looks effortless and real. The caption mentions how they bonded through supporting each other during difficult times, how grateful they are for a love that makes them both stronger. The sharp pang in my chest surprises me. I thought I was over this, past caring about what Liam was doing with his life. I tell myself I'm happy for him. Whatever, people move on, that's life. But sitting here staring at their faces, I can't shake the feeling that I'm looking at what could have been mine if I'd been a different person, someone capable of putting love before convenience. Marcus walks in, exactly like his photos, tall, well-dressed, checking his Apple Watch like time is money. I paste on my brightest smile and ask about his work, his hobbies, his goals. The same questions I've been asking on first dates for 2 years, hoping to find someone successful and ambitious enough to give me the lifestyle I think I deserve. The pattern continues, the cycle repeats. and I pretend I don't see it. Because admitting I see it would mean admitting I was wrong about everything. About Liam, about love, about what actually matters when life gets real and scary and difficult. And I'm not ready for that conversation yet, maybe never will be. So I laugh at Marcus's jokes and pretend his stories about expensive dinners and weekend trips are fascinating, and ignore the little voice asking why I'm still looking for someone to fund my happiness instead of building it myself. Some lessons are too hard to learn, too painful to accept, especially when the alternative is admitting that the best thing that ever happened to me walked away because I failed the most basic test of love, being there when it mattered most.